Okay.
Well, welcome, friends. Here we are again with Nick, the
Hi, everybody.
cheesemonger from Whole Foods, whose day job is to play with food. Welcome, Nick.
Hi, how you doing? Glad to be back. Yeah, we'll be having fun today talking about making your own cheese. Um, Hopefully, if you saw the last one, you learned a little bit more about cheese and what it is and why it's great. And now maybe you want to try your hand at making your own. So let's get into it. Um, so yeah, why would somebody make their own cheese? For me, what I'd hope to get across, for starters, it's beef for fun. Um, if you like to know where your food comes from and what goes into making it, that's another great reason to want to make your own cheese and try it for yourself. Um, Also, the bragging rights to tell your friends that you've made your own cheese and they haven't is a real thing. Uh, in Wisconsin, to be a master cheesemaker, it's a 10-year plus program to get that certification. So it's no small thing to undertake this task and even try it yourself at home, let alone pursue it as a hobby or a career. Um, the other reason would be if you have a lot of milk on your hands. As we'll find out, the ratio of what it takes to make a pound of cheese from a gallon of milk or, or a quantity of liquid milk is pretty steep. So if you've got a lot of milk on your hands, making your own cheese might be a good way to go. I will say the one of the reasons to make your own cheese would not be because it's easy. There's several steps and hurdles to overcome, and they're pretty crucial to not only a successful result, but a safe result. So we'll talk about that, and there are a few exceptions, and I'll show you a couple today. So not to scare you off too much, but I really want you to think about it. Are you sure you want to do this? This is a picture of milk, just regular old cow's milk, that was left in a laboratory setting in a basically clean room for a period of time, and this is what grew out of it. Nothing was added to it. It wasn't disturbed in any way until this picture was taken, and this is the result. So first thing I would get across is that milk is an outstanding environment for bacteria, mold, all sorts of creepy, crawly things to grow and thrive in. Now, some of that is essential to making cheese, but the key point is that cleanliness is of the utmost importance when it comes to making your own cheese at home. If this can grow out of regular old milk in a relatively clean setting, just be very careful with what you're doing in your own home, and what might grow out of that. So yeah, cleanliness is really, really the key to any kind of success in cheese making. Making cheese is really should be thought of as the controlled spoilage of milk. You're taking something fresh and trying to prolong it as long as possible. And to do that, you need to get the right bacteria to grow. So it's kind of a constant battle within that liquid milk to foster the right environment and encourage things that are beneficial to grow than those that might want to hurt you. Another hurdle to overcome is the expense. I mentioned it earlier, but it's about a 10-to-1 ratio, that being pounds of milk to pounds of cheese, when it comes to making your own cheese. So if a gallon of milk weighs about 8.5 pounds, you're not even going to get a pound of cheese out of that. So this is where the idea of needing if you've got a lot of milk, that's great. Making your own cheese is a great idea. If you don't, and it's just something you're setting out to try, be prepared for significant expense just to get started. The other component of that is you can't just use any old milk. If the milk has been pasteurized at too high a temperature, it just won't work for cheese making. It's the proteins and the structure of the milk has been denatured too much to the point that no matter how hard you try, you won't get any kind of result worth sharing or worth considering. So at Whole Foods right now, that milk that I'm talking about, which is, show you, it's this milk here. This is $9.50 a gallon. So right out the gate, for even a pound of cheese, you're talking about a $20 startup cost. Now, this is fantastic milk, organic, grass-fed. It's got a cream top. It's low temperature pasteurized. I mean, it's about as good as you can get. But that's what's required for any kind of quality cheese making. So just know that going in, that you will need to hunt out the right milk to make any kind of cheese at home on your own. The other component that you'll need to factor in is time. If you're talking about making some kind of cheddar or even some of the fresh cheeses like a chèvre or fromage blanc or something, these things require a fair amount of time just in terms of draining and just in terms of removing the liquid from the milk once you've got it to the point where it could be considered cheese. And then if you're talking about, something with an extended aging period, you know, a cheddar that's aged for 3 months, that's something you got to factor in, that you're not going to be able to enjoy this product for that amount of time. And during that amount of time, you're going to need to keep it maintained and in the right environment and keep an eye on those right bacteria and molds that you want to foster as opposed to the other. And really, I can't emphasize enough cleanliness. Most commercial kitchens would qualify as being, you know, clean environments for milk production. But even then, and this is in the news right now, there's a huge listeria outbreak of, you know, industrial, for lack of a better term, cheese and meats that are made according to food safe regulations, and it's spanned, you know, I think it's across 6 states. There's 16, 20 people, something in that neighborhood, who've all gotten sick. And listeria is very dangerous. This is more than just upset tummy. This has potential, like, life-threatening consequences. So
you can have organ failure from some of these.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kidneys, I mean, and whatever.
Yeah, listeria is no joke. And I remember I went to a conference once, and this is where my sort of proceed with caution mentality comes from. And it was a man, it was talking about these sorts of outbreaks within the cheese industry. And there was a scientist from MIT talking about the way we test for listeria in these kind of clean commercial kitchen environments. And it's almost as though we test to not find it. You know, if you're testing the large, broad surfaces that you're working with food, you're probably not going to find listeria crawling around and breeding. But in every kitchen that he tested, he was able to find it in a drain or in some back little corner that, you know, was neglected in the regular sanitation and cleaning of these spaces. So this stuff is just out there. I mean, you saw that original photo, and it loves to grow in milk, just like so many other things. So when you're talking about your home kitchen, your hands, that your cheese is a very hands-on process. I mean, every step of the way, everything needs to be as clean as you can get it, because it's a very real threat to be making this sort of product at home and not have the right mentality of safety behind it all to begin with. So that's my 2 cents. Just be careful out there. I want you to do it. I want you to make your own cheese. I want you to have fun with it, but definitely be careful and proceed with caution and cleanliness at every step of the way. So when it comes to cheese making, and there are generally recognized 8 steps to the process, if not 10 in some cases. And this applies to all cheese making in some contexts, but more specifically in harder cheeses or more commercial type cheeses. To apply this to home cheese making is really just to give you a sense of the scope of the process, that it is a multi-step process, and that at every step of the way, the potential for failure exists. So just to start out, preparing the milk in a commercial application involves pasteurization, standardizing the milk to make sure that it has a similar or the same amount of solids and sugars along the way to yield the same result every time. Now, this has been done for you at home, again, with this, buying something like this off the shelf. But again, you have to find this. You can't just use the regular old ultra high temperature pasteurized milk is not going to do it for you.
So Nick, this is pasteurized too, right?
Yeah, this is pasteurized. Raw milk is great, and if you got it or can get it, more power to you. But this is, again, it comes back to cleanliness.
I know. But
so-
I'm big into farmers markets, and they are, it's in Kansas, it's illegal, or Missouri,
Right.
it's illegal to sell milk at the farmers markets, but you can pick it up at the farm. And at
Exactly.
one time, I used to buy raw milk. Of course, it's the reputation of the farmers, because if they have an outbreak or something, they are ruined.
Yeah. Oh,
So
no doubt.
Yeah,
I would wholly encourage everyone to try raw milk at some point. I mean, it is distinct from what we have available in a grocery store. But you do need to seek it out. And to my knowledge, yeah, you have to go to a farm. That has to be a reputable farm. And again, it's not for everybody. There are cautions about those with compromised immune systems or everything else, because like I said, back to that picture of the moldy milk, everything loves that. There's a lot of things that can hurt you that love to grow in milk. So yeah, if you can get raw milk, that works out great for cheese. You do just have to have that little bit extra sense of caution with where you're getting it from. So when it comes to cheese making, once you've got your milk, it needs to be acidified in some kind of way. And that helps the breakdown of proteins. It helps start to break down the proteins in the milk. It starts the separation of curds and whey. It kind of gets the whole process going. Milk is naturally it tends towards the acidic side of things, but that extra kick is needed to really get the chemical reactions going to yield cheese. Once you've done that, and this again, you can over acidify. If you put in too much acid or the wrong type for the wrong application, the process is ruined. You got to start over. So yeah, keeping to tried and true recipes or being open to experimentation and failure is crucial to cheese making at home. Once you've acidified the milk, you need to really activate that breakdown of proteins and separation of solids and liquid. This is called curdling. Oftentimes, in many recipes, this is where you'll add rennet or the coagulant that will turn the liquid or into the solid fully. And this usually requires a pause in the process. The enzymes need time to work. So this could be anywhere from 1 to 2 hours to up to 12 hours of just letting the milk sit at a certain temperature in a controlled environment. So again, this is where things could go wildly wrong if not held in a clean environment under strict conditions. But once you get past that, it's time to cut the curd. It's an exciting time in cheese making. You've got sort of this gelatinous pot of milk. And from there, the size of the curd that you cut determines kind of the end result or of what cheese you're looking for. So the smaller you cut it, the more moisture comes out of the milk. So you yield a firmer cheese. If you think of Parmigiano Reggiano, a hard grating Italian cheese, that curd is cut to like the size of rice when they are making it. Something like a brie or a camembert, that curd is generally like hand ladled into a mold. So the curd is kept very large and intact over its aging process. So again, another point in which if you cut too small, cut too large, if the tool you introduce to the vat to cut the curd is not clean, that's a way that this could all go downhill again. From there, you know, it's about whatever you're making. If you're going to make a big block of cheddar or a wheel of cheese or whatever size or shape you're coming into, that comes into this step. And kind of tied into that is this final removal of as much moisture as possible. So some cheeses are just kind of hung up to drain. Some are pressed to really push out as much moisture as possible. But really, you're at this point trying to get rid of as much moisture as you can before the final few steps or completion of the cheese. After that, there's a step that's called cheddaring, named after the cheese, or the cheese is named after the process, whichever way you want to look at it. And that has to do with adding salt to the cheese and the curd at this point, and kind of layering it one on top of each other to incorporate the salt and also help in drain any of that excess moisture off. It also helps the curds kind of knit together, resulting in that firm textured cheese that we love. But not all cheese has to go through that step. It does all have to have some sort of salt, whether that is directly added to the curd, like in cheddaring, or some cheeses are kind of floated in a brine solution to get some sort of salt. Salt is the preservative of cheese. So you got to have some in there to kind of help maintain the good bacteria that's inside and keep off the bad bacteria that wants to get in on the outside. And this is another, you know, adding too much salt. If you've gotten to all the way to this step and you've added too much salt or not enough, it's all going to be ruined. So just again, cheese making, multi-step process. Be aware, be careful, and be open to experimentation and failure is what I would say. A lot of the cheeses that we know and eat and get regularly have gone through this process that's been perfected over a very long period of time by experts in the field. So the fact that you maybe didn't get it quite right the first time is not anything unusual. The other thing I would recommend would be to start small. Fresh cheeses are kind of the baby steps to making your own cheese. They tend to be very simple processes or recipes or a make. That's what a cheese recipe is referred to, is a make. They tend to have they tend to go along pretty quickly. You don't need nearly as much time to make some of these simple cheeses as you do the more aged, intricate or complex ones. And oftentimes what you're looking for with a fresh cheese is just that, is freshness. So if you can make it at home, your chances of coming up with something better than you'd buy off the shelf are pretty high. Something in the case of ricotta, fresh chev, if you've ever made your own yogurt at home, the end result that you come up with is very often better than what you'd find on the shelf for that simple reason of just being fresher.
I tried making yogurt at home. It was excellent and super easy.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yogurt can be as simple as adding yogurt to milk and keeping it warm overnight.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's
Here
not.
I can shamefully share my yogurt recipe here.
Yeah, please do. That yogurt is a great place to start. And really, if you can do that, you can make these other cheeses: mascarpone, creme fraiche, quark, crema. They're all variations on the same thing.
And guys, if you know where to get raw milk, please reach out to me because I know people.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, like I said, a trusted source for raw milk is a valuable source for fresh products. All right. So the other thing you can do, and I'll show you here today, is have some of the work done for you by using pre-made curds. At Whole Foods, we seasonally typically have fresh mozzarella curds available.
I didn't know.
Yeah, they're not a huge seller, but it's something we all like to have and play with during the summer. So doing that, you can kind of jump ahead of a lot of these steps and ensure quality is there for you to kind of take from that midpoint and really have fun with. So I'll show you that today. We'll get more into that. But if you're going to be making your own cheese, there's just a few things you're going to need. Milk. We kind of talked a little bit about that. The key here is it cannot be UHT, or ultra high pasteurized, which 95% of all milk on the shelf is ultra high pasteurized. And that's a safety concern. I mean, there's not anything wrong with it to begin with. It's just, it doesn't make good cheese. You can't make cheese out of it. So there is something called low temperature, long time, or long time, low temperature, that's LTLT pasteurized. And what that is the milk is heated to a temperature low enough to not denature all the proteins for a long enough time that it all gets pasteurized, as opposed to the ultra high temperature that is a very fast process, but the milk is basically boiled and thus just destroys anything you'd try to get out of it. So UHT is no good for cheese making, but low temperature pasteurization does exist. There's also short time, high temperature pasteurization, which will work, but the results are often they're kind of spotty. It's a little harder to work with. If you can get non-homogenized milk, you tend to get better results. The cream top milk, and that just has to, again, do with the solids have not been bounced around so much that they're already kind of battered and bruised before you get to it. So cream top is best. Organic preferred, really, that just speaks to a level of quality in the process of the milk. If the farmers are willing to go through the certification required to produce the milk and get it to market, you're almost guaranteed a better product. Now, I've said that, and people always comment on Chateau. And Chateau is a great product and it's not organic. But I think if you're comparing, a national organic brand to your local, not, conventional product, you're on the same playing field. So the highest quality milk is really what I mean by organic preferred. So once you got your milk, you also need some sort of acid. Probably in your house right now, you've got acetic acid, which is just white vinegar. That'll do just fine. Citric acid is commonly used as well. That's just comes from lemon. There are all sorts of conversion charts out there, but roughly a tablespoon of lemon juice yields as much citric acid as a teaspoon that you might be able to buy commercially. And then if you're feeling adventurous, rennet is widely available too. We have it at Whole Foods even, but Amazon sells any number of rennet tablets or drops or powders, and that is available for that sort of next level of cheese making beyond these fresh, ricotta, mascarpone, make your own yogurt kind of things, but widely available and tried and true, like for a consumer market. You'll need some sort of strainer. You're wanting to get rid of as much moisture as possible again. So cheesecloth is ideal. A colander kind of helps things along too, but just something to drain curds from whey. Salt, and no special need there. I mean, you see sea salt being used in a lot of things. I would probably recommend non-iodized salt, but I don't know that it would yield such an odd result or interfere with the process so much. It just has the potential. And then another key component is the cookware that you use. Stainless steel is great, but like aluminum pots or nonstick cookware, the milk tends to react strangely with it oftentimes, depending on what type of material it is. So I would recommend, the simpler the better. Most commercial cheese-making vats are either stainless steel or have a copper lining to them, which is just speaks to tradition. So yeah, just be careful with that. And same thing with the tools that you may use to stir the curd or cut it or whatever. You want it to be as simple or clean as possible. All right, so ricotta. This is a cheese you can make at home. The word itself means recooked, and it's made typically from the leftover whey of cheese making. So when you've got cheese, if you're making some other cheese, there's inevitably that liquid left over. There's still plenty of nutrients and some amount of solids left in it. This is where ricotta comes from. Rather than just wasting that product completely, you can make ricotta from it. Making ricotta at home, I would recommend using whole milk. This is a volume issue. If you just used whey, you'd need a lot more of it to get any sort of volume of ricotta out of it. So using whole milk, you get much more out of what you're starting with. And that being said, you can use part skim milk too. You just don't get as much, and it doesn't quite have the same richness to it. And ricotta is versatile. It's really, I mean, you use it in lasagnas, you can put it in pizza, cannoli is great. This is the one, in my mind, that best exemplifies the fresher is better ideology. Fresh, warm ricotta, just after you made it, is something wholly different than what you get off of a grocery store shelf. That's not to say you're going to want to swap out every recipe you have for ricotta with something made fresh at home. But if you want something singular and to enjoy in its sort of its purest form, fresh made ricotta is outstanding. So here is the ricotta make sheet, and this is from an outstanding website called the Cheese Science Toolkit. And and this website is very science driven, describing all the process of cheese and why cheese is like this, or what makes cheese melt, or any step along the way, and presented in a really great, informative and easy to comprehend manner. I highly recommend everybody who's interested look at this website. And this is their super simple recipe or make for ricotta. It takes milk, a little bit of vinegar. They heat the milk in the microwave. I would say that's fine as long as you do it slowly and cautiously. You don't want to blast the milk with microwave. You kind of want to, you know, burst it and stir to get an even heating. Really, you're just looking for not boiling milk, but very hot milk. Stir in the vinegar, let it sit until the curds separate from the liquid, and then transfer to a strainer, and that's it. You've got ricotta. It's really that simple. It's really that fast. But as I will momentarily show you, as I've ruined my vat of ricotta, it is not fraught with it is fraught with a certain amount of danger. So here I have my vat of ricotta. I was heating the milk as we were talking, and I added a little too much vinegar to milk that didn't quite get hot enough. So what I'm left with is sort of a gooey, stringy, clumpy mess that is not what I would want out of ricotta. Ricotta should be more of a light, fluffy, the curd should be separate. This is not going to be inedible, but it's not quite what I was going for. So in a certain sense, I'm glad that happened.
It's a teaching moment.
Now what do I do? So yeah, all to say, I'm going to put this into a strainer right now and kind of salvage what I can and show you that process. And this, like I said, this is what I would put into a lasagna. This is what I would put into blintzes and cover with delicious preserves, or try and salvage through other means than enjoy just in its pure form. But all I've done here is I've got a strainer, with some cheesecloth in it. I'm going to allow that to drain here. By the end of the class, we'll take a second look at it, see what we've got. But yeah, I can tell I put in a little too much acid. I didn't do very good measuring there, and it got a little too lumpy. No, anyway. Beyond that, you can try making chev at home. Chev refers to goat in French. So these, when oftentimes people will come in asking for goat cheese, and chev is what they're talking about if they're unfamiliar with whatever their recipe's asking for. You could also use cow's milk. This goes back thousands of years, the evidence of making cheese this way. It does require rennet though. So this is kind of this next step. It's a kind of a step beyond ricotta, in that it requires significantly more time and that extra step of adding rennet and waiting for it to curd. So this make comes from the New England Cheesemaking Supply Company, which another website I highly recommend for anybody looking to make their own cheese at home. They sell the individual components of cheese making at a like home kitchen scale, but then they also package it all very succinctly and provide detailed instructions along the way to make the stuff at home in like easy to purchase kits. So you can buy a chev making kit, and it comes with everything you need but the milk. And like I said, I like their attention to detail when it comes to every step of the way, describing what you're looking for, how it should go, and where you might go wrong. So New England Cheesemaking Supply, a great resource for everything you may need to make your own cheese at home. Looking at this very simple process, again, the thing to keep in mind is just that time commitment. You're going to need to hold milk in a clean space for 6 to 12 hours, if not longer, before draining and getting into the texture you want. So, that requires somewhere in your house. The fridge is okay, as long as you're not, being mindful of opening and closing the door and the environment that you're creating there. So yeah, they have tips and tricks for where and how to do this at home. But this was kind of what I was talking about in terms of the time commitment and like safety concern of having something like this just sitting on the counter for a day or two and hoping that nothing grows on it that you weren't expecting to grow on it. And then lastly, we'll talk about making your own mozzarella. So like I said, at Whole Foods, we will seasonally have available curd. Let me grab it right here. Let's do this. So this is what mozzarella curd looks like. It comes to us in like a 20-pound bag, and it's just kind of crumbly. There's not a whole lot of flavor to it. It's just it's I kind of call it cheese before it becomes cheese. This is just after the milk has been acidified, heated, the curd has been cut, and then they stop it there and package it up for us. So it's perfectly edible at this point. It's largely flavorless. It has a nice creaminess to it, a distinct kind of squeaky texture. It kind of like against your teeth, it almost creates a noise. But this if you start with this, it's as simple as adding it to hot water and then forming it into whatever shape you want to make your own mozzarella at home. So that can be a very fun process. Like I said, we really enjoy doing it here at the store. There is a bit of theater to it, so it can be very fun to do at home and share with friends and family. Yeah, so let me show you that. For the make sheet, or the make process, really, yeah, like I said, if you got the curds from us, you just need hot water and then an ice bath to cool it down from there. But the way this kind of goes is you need to get the curd sort of a uniform consistency before adding it to hot water. And when I say hot water, I mean hot water. It should be not boiling. I mean, you are going to plunge your hands into this bowl of hot water, but it should be as hot as you can stand it. Typically, we wear, 2 sets of rubber gloves if we're going to be making this at the store. Just for reference, right now, the water that I've got this in is about 130 degrees Fahrenheit right now, which is, it's hot. I wouldn't, yes, Magda.
Nick, on the previous slide, it said mozzarella curd. So are there specific curds for mozzarella, or did you just call it that?
Yeah, so there are, and really the biggest difference is that they haven't been salted.
I see.
If you're talking about cheddar curds, there's different enzymes. It's a slightly different process up to that point, but they are cheddar curds that you may have had, like poutine or something. They're salted and dried a little more. So, yeah, mozzarella curds are what I would look for.
Okay.
I've had people say that you can do this with just mozzarella, like using mozzarella off the shelf and melting it in hot water. I haven't ever seen those results to be anything that I would share or be proud of, or was better than the cheese before I melted it down. But people talk about being able to do it that way. I think from the curds, you get the product you're actually looking for rather than just remelted mozzarella.
So, and you said the curds are seasonal product, so it would be from like summertime or spring
Yeah,
to...
in the summertime, I mean, they start to be available for us usually around June, middle of June, and we can get them like through September. The last couple of years, we've only gotten them once, but if people are interested, just say the word, you know, we can get them, but I had to order these special for today. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so curds, hot water. You kind of want to stir the curds and get them all melted evenly before, you know, molding them in your hands. And that's kind of the fun part. So I've gone ahead, I've got my hot water had it going, and my curds are pretty melted. Let's see if my there we go. So this is just hot water and curds that have been sitting. And if you can see, they've kind of stitched together and melted a little bit. The idea here is to kind of get it all into one even mass. There's still some like curd separation, but as you work it, you get that stringy texture that you're looking for in a mozzarella and used to. Again, like I'll say it, this is hot. It's not scalding, it's not burning my hands, but as I work this cheese, it's, you know, it's very hot, and so just be careful as you do this. But this is generally the idea. Mozzarella it's what's categorized as a pasta filata cheese, which refers to this like stringy, stretchy nature that comes from this process of making the cheese. That's unique to it, to provolone and several other Italian cheeses. So all I'm doing here is really just kind of getting the cheese to an even consistency, working the curds together and get it warmed up a little bit, stretching it to get that texture right. It kind of lines up the protein molecules of the cheese and really helps with that, with melting and giving you that texture, you know, that stringy pizza texture that we love. And I mean, you can really go for it. It really, this is the fun part. And this is where you get things like braided mozzarella you sometimes see. Depending on what you're looking for, you can kind of pinch off a piece and just make small, like caprese size balls, I would call it. This is really the difference in the mozzarella you see on the shelf. Is they're all the same product, just different sizes. So, you know, something like that when cooled off. I've got an ice bath here, and that just kind of stops the melting and solidifies the cheese, and that can easily be sliced for a caprese salad, used in pizza. This is a very high moisture content cheese, so if you're going to use it on pizza, you just kind of have to account for that, there will be a fair amount of moisture that melts off. It'll certainly work. People like the little ones, you know. This is where you get to kind of have fun with it and really play. Anybody out there who's familiar with burrata, this is how you make burrata. It's generally just kind of like a bag of mozzarella, oftentimes filled with mozzarella curd, sometimes not, and cream, and then sealed up. And that's where you get burrata from. After, you know, sitting for a little while, that the cream and the curd inside will become ooey and gooey, and when you open it, you get that lovely, rich.
And it's made from buffalo, right?
Yeah, so traditionally, mozzarella began being made from buffalo milk, and arguably the best mozzarellas are still made from buffalo milk. Burrata doesn't have to be made from buffalo. It is available. We have some at Whole Foods. It is outstanding. Buffalo milk tends to be almost a little sweeter sort of flavor to it. It's a richer quality and flavor to it. Yeah, but buffalo burrata is really a rare, exceptional treat for sure.
And in the springtime, you sometimes carry the burrata. It's wrapped in a green leaf.
Yeah, that's a great one. That brand, it's tough to come by. It comes a long way, and it's a very delicate cheese. So this is, again, thinking about freshness. If you can make your own burrata, what you're going to get is going to be noticeably different and arguably better than what you can off a shelf because of that fresh quality, and it doesn't suffer damage during transport and things like that.
But it's an excellent cheese. We buy it in the springtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so looking at what else we got here, mozzarella, you know, if you work the cheese too much, you can get kind of sort of a tough product at the end. Again, sort of like my ricotta over here, that's not looking any better. It's not bad. It's just suited to better suited to other things. So if you do find yourself with something that's like a little stringy, little tough, that's where you'd look to melt that cheese. That's going to go on your pizza, on top of your lasagna, things like that. Still going to be great, just not going to have that same unique quality and texture that a really fresh, well-produced fresh mozzarella can. This here just kind of shows what I was talking about. A question I get asked a lot, you know, what is the difference between all these cheeses, all the fresh mozzarellas? And it's really just the size. Different names refer to different sizes, but otherwise it's the same process. It's the same cheese. It's just different applications, different preferences. Yeah. Yeah, so other than that, I mean, anybody really interested in making their own cheese at home, you know, you're not alone. There's many great resources available. American Cheese Society is a great place to start. They are an organization that promotes and supports cheese making at every level, and have an extensive group of people willing to help in every step of the way. Cheese Science Toolkit, I mentioned, a New England cheesemaking supply. This woman, Claudia Lucero, Urban Cheesecraft, she worked with, I think it was Restoration Hardware, in making their cheese making kits. So her website is full of great tips and recipes for making your own cheese at home in a really, you know, straightforward way. And her products are great in that same way, that they've been tried and tested to make it as successful for you at home as possible. And then anybody who's really interested in pursuing cheese making, the American Farmstead Cheese Book is kind of the definitive resource for making cheese, starting your own cheese operation, or being successful up to and including a commercial level of making your own cheese. So it's very technical. It's a book that is probably not for everybody, but has all the answers in it. So, you know, something I can't have a class like this and not recommend, but probably wouldn't expect everybody to run out and get their own copy. But if you do, let me know what you think, and we can talk about it.
Well, they can get the copy at the library.
Oh yeah, you can check it out at the library for sure. So yeah, that is cheese making at home. Hopefully, here, I'll show you. Let's see how my ricotta turned out here. So you know, it's It's all right. It's okay. It's still not quite the like texture I might want. It's a little gummy, but it tastes pretty good. It's got a nice sweetness to it. I haven't added any salt to it yet, and that will kind of help bring out a lot of the flavors of the milk. But something I'm not entirely dissatisfied with.
Well, that's perfect. Does anybody have any questions? You can type it in the chat room. And in the meantime, I wanted to share with you, Nick and I just decided we will offer more classes in the spring on olives, olive oil, and chocolates. So stay tuned for more programs. If you have suggestions for any other programming, please let me know. And I guess there are no questions. So well, thank you so much, Nick.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
This was excellent. I learned so many things from you. The last two classes I didn't really expect, but I learned a lot of things from you.
Great. That's the idea. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. Well, see you at Whole Foods. I'm there a lot. I love Whole Foods.
Great. Yeah. Stop by and say hi to me and everybody behind the cheese counter. Let us know how your cheese making at home goes. We may
Yes.
want to get you on the shelf. So, you know, if you're doing a great job. So
Definitely. Well, happy holiday season and see you in the spring.
all right. Take care, everybody. Stay warm and dry out there. Huh?
Bye-bye.
Bye.